So you are live.
Awesome. All right. Well, good evening. My name is Joanna Ogburn. I'm the chair of the Annapolis Conservancy Board, and I hereby call this meeting of the board to order July 14th at 5:30 p.m. To get us started here, we usually go over the Annapolis Conservancy Board minutes from the last session. I want to check in first and see if anybody had any comments or questions from the minutes from our last meeting. Nothing popping up. Well, Racine and I will admit, I have been delinquent on these counts. There were a couple of forms we have to attach to the meeting minutes because in our last meeting we went to closed session. And so Racine, I will get those to you to add to it. So
Okay.
that's on me. Apologies, guys. We probably can't go ahead and vote, but I wanted to see if anybody else had any other edits or questions about those minutes. Okay, and just for everybody's kind of knowledge, but whenever we do that closed session, I have to fill out a form or somebody has to fill it out in advance. And then there's a form you fill out afterwards. So it's a little complicated procedure there. All right, so our next agenda item was going to be about the Greenway map and next steps for it. And we're going to have Alderman Rob Savage here to kind of talk about the city council's interest in the map and where they'd like to see us go with it. I'm going to table that for right now, and if he's able to join us, we'll talk about it. If not, I can give you an introduction and then we'll bring him back at another meeting. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, so the next item on our agenda are the rules of procedure, and I wanted to check in first and see, Linda, if you were able to understand the edits that we'd all suggested from the last meeting and make any changes, or sort of just where that stood. And oh, and you're on mute. Don't you hate that?
Sorry. I hope I incorporated everything. And I have a fresh draft that I circulated. I didn't do track changes, but if I don't know how we want to proceed, but we could create a track changes version, probably one that goes from kind of the very earlier start of the conversation to where we landed now, if that is helpful. And I think we heard during the last meeting that it's not so easy to amend these. I mean, there's procedure. So being thoughtful in our final proposed version is probably the way to go.
Yeah, that's my recollection as well. We kind of went back and forth, and Ashley was helpful with us there to figure out, do we have to go through this rather lengthy process? And unfortunately, the answer was yes, if we're going to update it. So yeah, we kind of decided, let's make sure we really nail this down before we approve it in case we have to make any adjustments. Maybe the first step is, and can I do it? Yeah, I can pull it up if that's helpful for everybody. I just kind of wanted to see, did anybody here, maybe let me check first. Did you guys have a chance to look through it?
I copied it and read it. It certainly has grown over the many versions.
That happens.
Trudy.
Yes. Considering we went from virtually zero to this, it's
that's true. That's impressive. That's true.
I think it's a good template, and what I recall based on where we started is that we, as Trudy and maybe others pointed out, part of our mission has always been to work on what we call voluntary conservation efforts, to be supportive of landowners and others that suggest areas to conserve, figure out a way to do that, or recommend that the city do that. And so Trudy helped me develop a section that's in there now, procedures on that. We had a section originally on how we're responding to citizens noticing something on a conservation easement property that is of concern. So we started with that, and then we realized, we should have a section our procedure of what we should follow when we, in the course of our monitoring and other stewardship duties, notice something of concern and what the procedure is there. So those are some of the key sections.
Yeah, and is it helpful? Do you guys want me to pull it up? I can do that. If you guys want to look at any of the changes.
I just have a question. It was actually good for me to, without seeing the changes marked, I had to reread the whole thing, and it was a
It's
good.
true. It is.
I just don't know what a reserved right is, and we didn't ever sort of
Ooh.
define that. And it's not a term I've ever heard in all these years on the commission used. So I thought maybe a sentence or two about what is a reserved right, and who has them, and
Yeah.
I think the rest of it I understood.
Linda, would you like to explain the reserved right and why we haven't run into it so far with
it's based on our existing easements that I've looked at. This is a little bit different nomenclature than sort of what is reflected in our current easements. But a reserved right is something that a landowner, like the conservation easement, restricts the property, but yet maybe sets up certain rights that the landowner can elect to pursue to exercise in the future with approval. So if there's a common thing, I'm not saying in our easements, but a common thing in conservation easements is the future right to build maybe one home site, but we're going to, conserve the rest of the property. There's not a house there now. So a landowner would come forward at the time they want to exercise that right, give the proper notice to the holder of the easement, and go through any steps of approval if there's things set up for specifications and so forth. So that's generally what a reserved right means. That the easement sets up, the landowner has to ask in the future for approval of a certain thing that they want to do.
Might a reserved right get so extensive and big that they basically have granted very little? I mean, is there no definition at all that we'd want to put in? I mean, I can imagine saying, I'm going to give you donate this land, but I want 12 reserved rights, to the point where you'd say that's not consistent with what.
Yeah, right. And our rules of procedure are like, I don't see us getting into what's allowable under new easements that we do. I think our rules of procedure were meant to lay out like a fair process for the board as an advisory body to weigh in on easement matters, both to the public and to a landowner. So what I have in mind in there, and we can change it, is just that it's fitting into those procedures, like what steps we have to do if a landowner comes forward and asks the question. So it's not about.
I would just suggest a sentence or two that tells a little bit more about what a reserved right is. That's all. It seems like it hangs out there kind of undefined.
I think that's a good point, Trudy. And to your point, I'll just say, if you're working on an easement with a landowner and they say, I want to do an easement, but I want to reserve like 90% of the property as potential development, you wouldn't do it. I mean, a program wouldn't accept that. And certainly if you're doing an easement, which you're going to get some kind of tax benefits, the IRS has guidelines of, in order to make it a true easement. And so that would get caught at that stage, kind of before we'd probably get engaged with it, hopefully. But those are good questions. Let me see, does anybody have questions about this section here? So this is section 5, the procedure to request approval of a reserved right.
Joanne, it's Tom. Just a question, and Linda, maybe you would know this. This is not specifically that would fall under our purview, I don't believe, but I'm over in the Hunt Meadow area, Linda, and a large frustration that I've always had is they have a lot of land which basically they're not using. I mean, there's a wooded area that is totally set aside, and it's a good thoroughfare basically for the for the deers and the antelope playing, going from when they finish playing golf, they can go down by quiet waters and rest. But the real issue is we all are keeping inundated with, hi, how would you like to buy, get solar panels, et cetera, et cetera. There's this huge plot of land that belongs to the homeowners association that is left totally empty. There's nothing there that I know of. There is no plans for it that would perhaps at some point in time as we get going, somebody might say, hey, why not a solar farm that the benefits would then, go to, the homeowners association or whatever the case may be. It would be, an alternate use than what we would normally do for, Conservancy board. And I'm not sure of any other specific, board or committee within the, within the city that would that they could refer them to for questions. I've had one question raised to me and I said, yeah, let me check.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, just as sort of a, practitioner that commonly is dealing with communities concerned about something happening on a piece of property.
Right.
I would recommend that the concerned person look at what are the declarations and covenants, and some of the developers on the call would know this, recorded against that property as part of how the subdivision was set up.
Right.
Because it may be in their own governing documents, they can't allow something like that. I know in certain instances, common areas may not be allowed to be set up for income generating outside entities to come in and use the property. Like it might be against state statute. I know that was the case in a condo that I was involved with in the past. So I would kind of look to that first of what governs that particular property.
Okay, I've got a feeling that the property that it predates anything that was done with the new energy conservation. It was done. It was put in the late 70s. So I'm not sure where to go to for the person to actually ask. And they're not, for me, I'm just looking to get rid of all these crazy envelopes that come to my my mailbox every time saying, hey, how would you like to shift this? We can do this, and we can throw solar panels on the roof, but our homeowners association isn't really thrilled with that. So, and I'm just, the questions are getting to be repetitive. And it may be time to at least surface it to somebody, whoever that somebody is, that might be able to, to know what's going on, because we're going to end up with, that question track again has done nothing but accelerate over the years. So thought I'd bounce it off you guys, since you all are far more attuned to this stuff than I am, at least from my little corner of the world. But it would give me, obviously here within the community, an opportunity to set this land aside for some sort of positive use that would in turn help the city, perhaps, and would also be, good for the community, such a deal that we got for you. It helps offset this, that, and the other thing. And it would be a kind of like a business to business or city to business or something where, everybody could win on it if in fact that it was, put before some committee to discuss. I don't expect an answer now, but I just, we've got a brain trust here.
So I think you're saying, how could this nice private open space that the community has some interest in the future of be more useful to the broader community?
Yeah, it could be, because right now the interest, because of the maintenance of everything else, I mean, everybody is trying to keep tabs to, we really don't want to spend an awful lot of money, because we've got, we've got the pool, we've got the tennis court, and we've got, whatever the case is already. And we really, in the economy, gee, we really don't want to go spend more money. But here is an opportunity to have land which is currently not being utilized for anything, to possibly, if for nothing else, then officially raise the argument, back with the board within Hunt Meadow, but also with the city,
Tom,
the alderman.
doesn't the section that got added about how we bring in potential new property cover that? I mean, yes, Hunt Meadow's got to do its thing, but once it had a plan of action, doesn't our procedures speak to how we would then consider whatever is being proposed if it relates to us?
Well, I think if it relates to us on this thing, Trudy, I mean, that's fine, but you hate like heck to put a square peg in a round hole. I mean, it might not fit specifically, the conservation area, but I mean, it's being conserved now. It is a big open field. It is overgrown with, with grass and weeds and everything else that's in there. And that's what happens until the it comes and kills
Maybe
it
it's
all.
the tree planting people. It's
I
like,
think, you've got options.
for maybe it wouldn't cost the community that much. Maybe with making the right connections to other entities, in the city, like the tree planting people, the community would be interested.
Yeah.
If you're talking to someone that lives in that community,
Well, yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, the only pushback that I've had ever since I've tried to float something like, gee, really wouldn't, I mean, we're not using it. The reason why we don't want to put it into a conservation easement is we don't want other people to be in the community and using it. Well, this would allow the area to stay in its current open space, or however that it would be proposed in order to be able to capitalize it. Plus, it would end up being a direct benefit to the homeowners within the community. So there's the incentive, there's the carrot that's never been there.
I
think you first have to have someone find out if it's already restricted.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. I think that's the first step is to see what you've got on there right now. And, even if you would do an easement, it might already be restricted to the point where you wouldn't do it because it's already going to prohibit the same things an easement would.
Yeah.
But at that stage, Tom, I would say if there is, once you've kind of figured that out, an interest, I think I know the property you're talking about because I looked at it specifically when we did some of the greenway planning, and it's a good chunk of property, and it's close to like Kingsport. It sort of ties in with the county's greenway plan. So I remember that one clearly because there aren't that many chunks of land that size. It's not enormous, but it's decent. And
it is decent. Okay. Hey,
so,
thank you all.
Yeah, I would say once you get there, I think it'd be great if there is interest at all in the community and looking at options of having, like, let's do a site visit. Let's go check it out and see what the interest level is, because there are options, easements, there's selling to the city to set aside in certain ways, there's forest planting, there are a number of different things there that we could, I think, get engaged with. And
I'll bounce it off the homeowner who suggested it, and I'll also bounce off the homeowners association committees here, and make sure they're at least, have enough people, wanting to pursue, and then I'll close the loop with you all, just to keep you in the loop.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's a cool potential opportunity. No, it's always good to check those out. So let me bring us back here to what is this thing? The rules of procedure. And so I have one question about the reserved rights section, but I wanted to see if anybody else did, since we were sort of talking about that just now.
Yeah, I guess my only question is kind of probably what Trudy was talking about in her question, and it kind of answer of having a several sentence definition of what a reserved right is might answer my question. But when we originally were talking about this concept, one of the issues I thought was some of the conservation easements aren't as ironclad as one might hope in terms of saying like these things are restricted. but there's a carve out unless the board and the city agree otherwise. So it's how do we approach those situations where there's an issue that comes about, landowner says, hey, I want to do X, Y, Z. We say, no, it's restricted, but there's this language like, oh, well, perhaps it could be amended with your vote. So I think that could also be a reserve right, but maybe fleshing out what a reserve right actually is could help us with that
That's
issue.
a very good point, because that is actually, as you, Patrick, is more in line, the situation is more in line with our current easements. It's, these things are restricted, but hey, you know, with approval by the city, you know, it could be amended. So that's probably the situation we're going to find ourselves in more so.
And Patrick, that was exactly my question. I was curious. And so I will be honest, I flipped through this rather quickly last night.
So that's a request for amendment, because like a reserved right is specifically more about specifying the easement that they can come forward in the future and ask to exercise that right. I think what we're talking about here is our procedures to react to amendments to easements.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, because that's probably what we're, like you said, at this point. I don't think any of our easements have reserve rights. I might be wrong on that, but I'm going to say I'm like 90% sure. Just looking at the way a lot of them are set up. And I don't know, Ashley, if you're on, if you had any kind of thoughts about this, or. She could be tied up at the moment. Linda, did you have anything there you're going to add? I feel like I might just cut you off.
No. Thanks for bringing up that point.
I'm here, Joanna. Sorry,
Oh.
I'm driving home from something, so it just took me
That's
a second.
okay. No.
So yeah, the reserved, we probably don't have many reserved rights, and if they were in there, they don't require generally any city approval. It's a given right, and the
Right.
property owner has the unilateral option to exercise it. So there probably wouldn't be much input from us in that scenario. Is the amendments where it's not a unilateral right, it's you could have this option to do something, but you have to get city approval, is probably much more likely to occur and is probably in more of our conservation easement documents. And so that wouldn't be a unilateral right. That would be a ask by the landowner and approval by the city. So it'd have to be sort of like more of a mutual decision.
That makes sense.
And that's probably more likely to happen because you'll have things in there like landowner can request to do X, Y, and Z with city approval. You probably have a lot of that type of language in the various conservation easements.
Okay.
And in those cases, the city would probably come to you guys for a insights or recommendation before it made its decision, I would hope.
So Ashley, do you think we should have a paragraph on our procedures for developing a recommendation on amendment? Or is that not necessary?
I don't think you need to have anything too in depth, but it couldn't hurt, because I do foresee that scenario is probably the most likely scenario to occur.
I would just say, I think it's definitely helpful to have a few lines. It doesn't have to be crazy, but what do you do when you have the owner of a property that's eased come to you and say, can we put in a dog park? And then it's like, oh gosh, I don't know. Just sort of what that process is. So it's clear to those folks, it's clear to us and to future board members as well. It's definitely really helpful. And I imagine it could be quite similar.
Yeah, it wouldn't have to be anything too different. It could be the same sort of process but it would just be specifically for amendments to existing easements.
Sounds good.
Now, what do you guys think about? So should we keep the piece that's in here about approval of a reserved right as well? Or is that not pertain to us, like as you might have been alluding to there?
It sounds like we shouldn't really use that phrase.
Okay.
that is more of my professional day-to-day job. It's a very
Yeah.
common phrase, but I think maybe we should shift in, like, as Patrick started this portion of the conversation, and Trudy, make it a little bit more broader.
Okay, so just to adjust this language, so it's kind of a similar process, but it's just
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
amendments potentially, or whatever that term is.
Yeah, so we've got our sections on monitoring, procedures for that, for concerns in the community about a potential violation, and then procedures for a potential violation that we observe, and procedures for that, and then procedures for initiating potential future conservation easements. And this section is about weighing in on requests from existing easement landowners.
It's looking pretty good. I like Trudy. We have come a long way from nothing to something. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, Patrick, I saw you come off mute there for a second. Did you have another question or comment about any of these sections?
No, I think it's all really good. And I really think the section on the reserve right is probably could be pretty applicable just for an amendment. So just kind of swapping out some language, I think.
Can I ask to clarify? So are you going to keep the phrase reserved rights, or are you taking that out and broadening sort of a definition that's similar to it?
I think
I'm so confused. I'm sorry.
No, you're not.
I
You're
think
fine.
we're gonna broad, like, how we phrase it.
Does that answer your question, Racine?
Yeah.
No, I think it's a really good question, actually. And I just wanted to double check. If anybody has any questions about the difference between what a reserved right versus this kind of amendment request that we tend to get. Does that all make sense? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's always good. Thank you for asking. So that was the section in my memory, Linda, where we had kind of the most changes or new information. Were there other pieces that had significant changes in it?
I had to develop, I think it was appropriate, maybe others would differ, but on the section where the board in their monitoring witnessed a potential violation, we didn't
Okay.
have anything except for like a paragraph.
Oh, right. Yes.
So I
remember that now.
thought we could copy some of the procedures that we already had in there for evaluating external parties coming forward noticing a potential violation. So I kind of cut and paste some of those paragraphs in there too.
I do remember that. I know you said that. Okay. Did anybody else have other questions or pieces of this you wanted to ask about, dig into?
I know I said I read it all again, but what I don't remember is, did we speak to there at all in terms of our simple notification back to the home, to the property owner or the manager of the property, whatever, that they passed, they done good. We, talked about doing that over the years. Did we incorporate that? Do we care whether we put that in our procedure? We wouldn't have to have it in our procedures to do it, but.
So Trudy, are you asking if, like, after we monitor a property, if it looks great?
Yeah.
Do we say in here, we're going to write them a letter and say, looking good? I don't think we do say that in here. And then, so are you kind of asking the group here?
Well, I thought.
Do we need to?
Times we've talked about it from time to time. There's general consensus that that's be a nice idea to communicate back and tell them we inspected it and it was looking good. Or
Yeah.
we have issue. There is a section where we talked back when we have issues, right?
Right.
But
I believe, yeah.
Sort of just we came, we saw, we liked. Well done. It's, I don't know.
Well,
For all these rigid rules, it might be nice to have something that's kind of
friendly.
friendly, like we're really all here to be nice, do good.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's there's the sort of a pro and con that's not a con really, but the con is just lack of capacity. But
yeah.
there's definitely it's good practice to like have some communication with landowners. And that is usually coming on the notice of, hey, we're going to come out and do your, annual monitoring. And that's just the way you kind of learn things over time about if something changed with a property. But that's more common with individual landowners, that they've sold the property. In this case, we're talking about like development set asides. So, it's a little bit different. And it's,
Yeah.
I think we talked about in the past, the nature of how a lot of these are the contact is the homeowners association, and that changes so often.
Or the property management firm.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of torn between doing it or not doing it. And maybe it is, we just kind of, as you said, Linda, we try to adopt that as a good practice, but don't kind of codify it here. Based on, because I, like you, obviously have concerns about capacity. Just, we've always talked about this, like you said, Trudy, but we've never all the way gotten through. And it is tough because they change the people or the managers or the homeowners association. And then I don't, what are they going to do with it from there? I don't really know is part of the question. I'll say one potential encroachment issue we've become aware of is it's a property owner next to the property owned by the homeowners association. So would they, and that property has probably changed hands and they weren't aware of the easement next to them, but would informing the homeowners association every year, would that message get to that new homeowner? I don't know. It's sort of tricky, but I also, sorry, I'm just rambling here, folks, but on the pro side, I like you, Linda, and like you, Trudy, we've talked about, it'd just be nice to remind people that we're here as a board and also you've got an easement and, thank you for keeping an eye on it, kind of a
Valuable
thing.
resource for our city and
Yeah. So it's,
But I guess we can still, you don't have to have it, I guess, in a procedure to say you can do that to do it because I know we go round and round about so many multifamily structures spend all their time trying to hide who the real owners are.
yeah.
It's impossible to know
Lord,
who
yeah.
to speak to, as one
Yep.
who owned multiple subsidiaries with multiple names and ownership. And,
It
okay,
could be tricky.
yeah.
So what do you guys think? Do you like the idea of putting it in here? Or do you like the idea of adopting it sort of, for us as like a good practice and let's
Why don't we
aim
just
for
put
that?
it in as we may and be done with it, just so the idea doesn't get totally lost since we have spent a little bit of time over the years. Just that we may do that. That's one of the things we're giving ourselves permission to do if we choose to do
Okay.
it.
So I think suggestion from Trudy is to put some language in here, but make it a little bit fuzzy. We may do this. What are you guys' thoughts? What do you guys think? Tom, Linda, Patrick, Jack?
Linda flinched.
Linda flinched. I knew you would.
I'm a bit more like what I was thinking really was, let's ask Ashley what the fundamental purpose of the procedures are, and because she's the attorney, and I just think of them as why we have this is sort of a fairness to treat people fairly that come forward to our citizen board in our deliberations, because we're going to have some weight with a city. So I that's kind of how I see it versus day-to-day good practices and procedures type of thing.
All right, Ashley, if you're able to share your two thoughts, I'm not sure that's the right expression. You can have more than two.
She's a lawyer after all.
Many. All right, she may be tied up at the moment. We can come back to that. So I'm going to make sure you get that down as sort of a question, but I think you're probably right there, Linda.
For what it's worth, Linda, it seems to me that the real achievement of these procedures is, for once as a board member, I understand what what it is.
That's
we
huge.
think Our process is. So I guess in my thinking, it falls a little more in that category.
Hmm.
When we tried to sort out our own processes and behaviors, but I don't care at all. I mean, this is not a big point. I don't want to stall it.
No, let's just see real quick, Tom, Jack, or Patrick. Quick thoughts here.
Just again, this Tom, just looking at the, the value added, if Trudy is saying, is something that, that will make it flow a little bit more user friendly to everybody, that's terrific. I mean, this is something that if the situation presents itself, we're all going to kind of pull the blinders off and then take a good look at everything anyway. So it's just so that somebody else, either new board members or people reading it, from the city or the council, will take a look at it and say, okay, yeah, fine, they know what the heck they're doing. So, I mean, it's got to be a value added as opposed to just, some additional
Something.
text words.
All right, Jack.
I agree with what Tom just said. I mean, I think we've done a good job with this. I don't know if we need to include language about following up with landowners if we inspect their property and everything looks good. But, like you brought up last week, or like you brought up earlier, Joanna, when we do inspect an easement and there's something that maybe shouldn't be there, maybe an encroachment like we may have observed, then I think we already have some procedures in there.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, any thoughts from you? Another attorney with us?
I think everything's been said. I think it doesn't hurt to add non-obligatory language, but I think it'll end up being an administrative burden in some ways that really isn't getting to, like we all said, it. Most of these are HOAs or developers or entities that are individualists. So it might not get to anybody in the end, but doesn't hurt to include.
Linda, does that give you enough direction?
That seems flipped to me, but I am happy.
I was hoping you could take something else from that.
So it might be truly as simple as, I don't know, something about the board may communicate to owners of easement properties, in between monitoring visits or something. I don't know.
Certainly.
Or if you want to suggest something, I'd be happy to incorporate it.
I just do think, I guess partly because our procedures now have gotten almost sort of so legalistic and almost sometimes punitive sounding, that's something that remembers to, even if it's a property management firm who gets a letter back and says, you did a good job, this is a valuable resource, the city appreciates it. They're going to show it to the owner and say, look, we did a good job keeping that strand of trees or whatever. I'm thinking about homes at the Glen, that, I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's how I think of rules of procedure. It's almost like bylaws. It's
Mhm.
it's not a hugely public facing.
It's fine.
What we're all about, so to speak.
I leave that to procedural experts. I think I've used up more time on this topic than
That's okay.
works anyway.
How about, do you want to see if there's something that feels right, Linda, when you're sort of putting
I
it in
will.
there? And then let's, we can make sure we kind of highlight, I'm going to circle down my notes, kind of highlight it when we look at this one more time before we approve it, and then kind of make that final decision.
Okay, cool.
Okay, great. And so, yeah, that's kind of was planning. So since there'll be some changes to it, we were all wanting to make sure we get this right, that will, Linda, thank you so much for doing this, by the way.
Sure.
Linda will kind of make these last edits to this, and then at this next
So we're
meeting.
gonna have to do the final formatting because I'm awful on adjusting incorrect formatting. So
Formatting.
yes.
Ashley. And actually, I was just going to check. Ashley, are you able to come off mute? Because I have a question for you, but if not, it's okay. Okay, I'll come back to that, Ashley. So formatting, I'm making a note of that too. And I definitely will just check in, Ashley, with you about the formatting to make sure if there's anything we need to make, do in particular, we're doing that. But yeah, Linda, we can definitely help with that. Okay. All right. That's great.
Well done.
Yeah. That was awesome. Yeah, this is going to be great. Get the sucker done. So I'll just share one thing that came up for me recently, I got an email from Brian Adams, who's the city arborist, and Jackie Guild about another potential encroachment issue that is, where is it? It's near, I don't even know what the name of that property is. I'm going to pull up the city-owned property. Not the one in question here. Sorry guys, hang on. Okay, where are you? Apologies. Here we go. Okay. Just want to make sure I have the right screen on. Okay, so, and this is actually an area that a few of us went out to a week or so ago, I guess. And let me know when you can, if you can see my screen. I think I
See your
froze.
name.
Yeah. My screen is frozen a bit here. Can you guys hear me? It sounds like Trudy can.
I can hear you, just can't see any screen.
I'm going to give it a second, but I will try to describe this as I do.
It says that you have started it. Oh, now you can see
There we go.
Hey, Nan.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm going to switch my. Sorry about that, guys. So this is a area we went out and looked at, a few of us a couple of weeks ago. It is this headwaters of College Creek here. So just behind the police department. And we actually went, there's an easement here called the Brewer Avenue easement, sort of in this area. That's kind of what we went and looked at. We also went and looked at sort of the very start of College Creek. This is where it stopped from being piped through the city to actually becoming a bit of a stream. And I'm going to click on this so you guys can see. I hate it when it does this. I don't know how to do it easily, but this parcel here, the one that follows the creek, and then these two on the sides, they're all now owned by the city of Annapolis. And there is a potential encroachment issue from one of the nearby homeowners into this property. I think my knowledge is that there was an easement on a portion of this property where the encroachment is potentially taking place. But that property is now owned by the city of Annapolis. And so my question here is a couple of things for the group. One is, what are our next steps looking at our new rules of procedure we almost have completed here? And then two, if this is a property initially had an easement that was held by the city on a private property, has since become owned by the city of Annapolis, I assume that sort of you lose the easement aspect of it at that point. And that's where I was going to check in with Ashley and then sort of ask that question. If it is a city-owned property, should we still, and I think the answer is yes, and I want to see what you guys think. If it's a city-owned property, should we still go through the same steps in our rules of procedure? Even though at that point it's going to be an encroachment issue on a city of Annapolis property, you know, and that sort of, I imagine, brings in a different level of, I don't know, city interest.
Do we know who is encroaching? Just out of, I got
Yes.
lost halfway in there.
Yeah, I've seen I know which property it is. I just didn't want to bring it up. Just
No, that's
kinda,
all right. It's and that is that property that is encroaching, you said, is now city property or it's still privately owned?
It's encroaching onto city property.
Okay, but it is a privately owned.
No.
No, everything is city.
Mm-hmm. So a next door private landowner has extended something onto city of Annapolis property.
Okay. And that's the part that we're questioning.
Oh,
Well, it brought up a couple of questions. So it used to be property that had an easement on it that was held by the city, but the city then purchased the property. So
Joanna, my first thought is, and Ashley probably can correct me if I'm wrong, but without seeing title and seeing how the city took title to the fee simple interest in that land, there could be a merger issue where there's no longer any easement, conservation easement there, and unless the city put something in place before they purchased that land area, I'm not sure how the RACB board would have any kind of interest in it anymore. It'd be a city of Annapolis problem.
That was sort of my question to this board here. Go ahead, others that had.
So I think it's a legal,
I'm
it's a
less
legal
familiar,
question.
but
Yeah.
in this rules of procedure, there's some reference to the fact that there may be city-owned properties
Mhm.
that we've been asked to monitor.
Yeah,
This might
Hawkins
be in that
Cove.
bucket.
Yeah, is that example, you know? And I assume, this board, but I kind of wanted to see what you guys felt. I assume if it is a property like that, let's take Hawkins Cove, for example, we've been monitoring for a long time, really important to a lot of us. If there was an encroachment issue there where a nearby homeowner did something on that property they shouldn't be doing, do we want to still follow the procedures we laid out here as a board and make a recommendation to the city? Or do you want to just kind of wash your hands of it because it's a city-owned, thing, and they will likely have their own things they want to go through? Is my question making sense?
Is this, Joanna,
Okay.
is the city is aware of it, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they brought it to our attention. Yeah.
Are they going
Okay.
to take action on it?
Yeah, who in the city is aware of it?
Brian Adams, the city arborist, and Jackie Guile is as well. And they've gone out and done a site visit, and it's pretty well confirmed that the encroachment is on the city property. So
What's our role in a case like that?
that's kind of what I'm asking. I'm trying to see. I think we could, kind of follow the procedures we have here, which at this point, I think, I think one, we would check in and make sure that the staff said, yes, this is definitely happening on city property. And at that point, we could invite the homeowner, I think, which is our next steps in the procedure here, to come to the board. We'd sort of discuss it potentially. But I'm not sure if that makes sense because it's sort of a city prop.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, if you look at it, I think we exist to give let me back up. All of the language about like having the landowner come forward, have an opportunity in our meeting, I think is more so in the section where a citizen has pointed out a potential violation. And so rather than just hearing from that citizen, we're also giving the landowner in question an opportunity to come forward with their information. I don't know that we set up that same lengthy procedure in the case where the city or the board observe a violation. Like if it's already the point where the city staff have observed the violation, then it seems like they can take action. Now, if someone complains that the city's not taking action, maybe we take steps to make a more formal recommendation to the city that they take action.
Would it be
That make
helpful if we actually talk to the people, like talk to our arborists and saying, hey, what do you want to do from that? Or do you want us to get involved? I mean, just to get a confirmation so we're all at least kind of marching in the right direction.
Yeah.
Because we're all city when we're talking things like this. So, and it just depends on, who, I don't want to say who has the most weight, but, where's the issue? Yes, it's been verified, and okay, fine. Now, where do we go from here? And the determination of where we go from here, I think, would be a whole lot better and stronger if all of us were talking, together on this one. If they say, sure, Conservancy Board, why don't you proceed the way that you have, bringing them in, alerting them to the point that, yes, you do have an area of conflict, and it has been confirmed by the arborist. And if that's the case, seeing what they want to do. And then if they come back and say, gee, no, we don't want to do that, then we can take it to the point, next in elevation. I think, if we can handle it at the lowest possible area, that's great, as long as we keep everybody involved. That way, the neighbor who reported it, knows that something is happening. The people that are involved understand that there is a problem and that it has been confirmed not only by the arborist, but by a second entity within the city. And okay, fine, now we have a record of what we should do or what we're asking, or, you know, what in our opinion that we're going to forward for them to do. And we may be able to come up with something that's actually, you know, beneficial and helpful, as opposed to, you know, coming with a big stick.
I presume, having near completion on these comprehensive, wonderful procedures, that we are now the entity that has the most procedures written down between ourselves and city staff. And if they ask us to give counsel and advice, we now are procedurally the experts on how to proceed with this and how to do it. So I think it makes sense for us to use the procedures we've got when requested. I mean, if the city said no, that you're the last people we want to hear from, we'd be happy to go away. But if they ask our opinion and we have procedures for how to handle it, then we want to. And we should someday, as a quick aside, I don't want to stir up a big discussion on this, but I wish we could revisit again sometime, Joan, when you can't think of anything to do with us, is how do we get land that some are, some the city, and you know, this, no matter how many years I'm going to be on this commission, I don't think I'm ever going to quite get sort of how do we get in these funny gumbled, you know, city pieces of property. We just, as our West Annapolis cleanup day, Earth Day, started to clean up Tucker Street Extended. There's a huge piece of land there filled with wildlife and debris and all sorts of things. Well, you know, why doesn't that get transferred to us and get under some management authority with some processes? What's it doing? Just sort of hanging there all neglected. And, you know, I've talked many times about the ravine below my house. I mean, there's just these chunks of neglected sort of city land, of which I gather maybe this isn't neglected. Everybody's paid more attention to that. But I just find it the most confusing thing. We have a city entity charged with looking after our land. Why don't we look after all the vacant land that's, you know, being conserved? I just never have.
Where do we draw the line? Or why has it been drawn?
You know, what's the history? But not tonight. Sometime. I know we have this discussion in parts, but we've got enough new people now, and it seems to me we get stuck in these places where we don't know. You know, now we've got the section about if we saw a piece of land, we wanted to say this should come under our domain. We at least have a process for that, and we could then, I guess, use that to create a discussion. But I don't know, if it's up to me, it seems like this board ought to have control of all the kind of unused preserved land in the city. I mean, what's the city doesn't think about it very much, does it? I mean, they've got plenty of things to think about. We're in all these dabbles of land that they own.
Well, I think yes, that is a big discussion. You're right. We could definitely sort of put that on the agenda. But what I would say that I think, Trudy, you're getting at is something we, you know, have been working towards. And I think I want to keep going with is just clarifying what is it that we are and aren't and should be and shouldn't be monitoring and paying attention to. And so one of the updates we're going to get to in just a minute here is looking at some of these easements that we have been paying attention to. Should we continue to monitor them every year? Should we not? And then looking at the additional easements that are on the website that we don't normally really go out and take a look at. Should we be paying attention to those? And so I think it's sort of a natural extension. This question you're asking is sort of, what exactly is our purview? Can we nail that down a little bit better? You know, can we be a little bit more, clear what we should and shouldn't be looking at? You know, we had a discussion, I think, you know, months ago about Forest Conservation Act easements, right? Is that something we should pay attention to? So I think you're on a good kind of track there, I guess is what I'm saying. In terms of
for another time.
but it's relevant. So I do think that's a good point.
Well, and I think before we had clear procedures, it was sort of, well, we don't have much to hang our hat on either. And we know procedurally how to, but now we've got pretty good comprehensive procedures. It seems to me we can be a little more assertive that, hey, aren't we the stewards of the land? That's anyway, enough said.
Okay. So put that down, to continue with future discussions. I think also with this encroachment issue I'm kind of bringing up here, I think it sounds like the step is to let's check in with the city and say, okay, do you want us to really dive in and take a look at this? If so, here's what our procedures are. Is that good? That's what we would proceed with
Perfect.
and see what they come back with. Okay, all right.
And Joanna, I just want to point out, like I said, without seeing the title, I think there could be an issue of whether or not the easement was extinguished.
Yeah, that was my question too. I don't,
So-
yeah, I've never dealt with that situation.
I would make sure to point that out to the city.
Okay. All right, so that's a good one. Okay. All right, so I think we're good on our rules of procedure there. I'm gonna stop sharing this. Ooh, sorry, that was so hard to share, guys. I'm gonna pull up my notes for today. Okay.
Joanna, I guess before we move on, just
Yeah.
one last thing on the rules of procedure. What's your kind of thought process on guiding this home? Are we going to do like one more turn of reviewing the document and then send it to Ashley to review one more time? Because I think she was integral in helping. I think she might have reviewed Linda's initial draft to make sure it was kosher. Maybe do
She
something
did.
like that. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that was kind of my thought process, Patrick. And if that
Okay.
sounds good to you guys, yeah, Linda, once you're able to, and thank you again so much for doing that, make these additional edits. Let's ship it over to Ashley, make sure it all looks good. We can ask about the formatting at that point. And then I think bring it back to this board one final time. And we can, again, just really highlight those additional changes. And then I think we're ready for a final vote. Does that sound good to everybody?
Thank you, Joe. Yep.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for bringing that kind of full circle there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of these updates because it's sort of following this conversation that Trudy was alluding to, or not alluding to, was starting there. All right, so identifying additional easement discrepancies. Doesn't that sound exciting? So whatever it was, you guys, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, I can't remember now, but Linda, Jack, Patrick, and myself, we went out to a couple of properties to probably for one of the first times I've certainly done this with the board, really look at a property, have the plat in front of us, have the deed terms in front of us, and then also have those satellite imagery maps that someone at some point way back when in the city created for us, and kind of look across these and ask the question, one, is this an easement we should continue to monitor? Does it make sense to monitor this? Two, is it clear what the deed terms are when it comes to conservation? Does the map of the easement area that we have from the city, does that actually line up with what the plat says? And where it says on the plat the easement area is it clear to us? Is it not clear? What questions do we need answered for this property? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so we did that as sort of, oh, go ahead, Linda. I see you.
I think it might be helpful, it just for us, and then in case anyone really watches this video, just to say, when we talk about generically getting rid of easements or not monitoring them, I think part of what Joanna is saying is that in looking at the items posted on our website that are characterized as conservation easements, there are just certain instances where things are on there are just really landscape, like set aside, that are in fact not really conservation easements, and likely we haven't been monitoring and would not need to monitor in the future. And so just properly characterizing sort of what we have, and getting on a path with that. So
Linda, I really appreciate that. You're
Yeah.
covering me, and it's always appreciated. It's good. It's good to be clear. This is Trudy, like you said, we have a number of properties or pieces of properties that this board has monitored or looked at over the years. Some have actual conservation easements. Some do not. Some have these sort of landscape areas. Some have open space areas. Some are city-owned properties that don't have an easement. So we have this mix of things. And I think what we're trying to nail down, Trudy, you just talked about this, which of these really make sense for us to continue to monitor and try to help manage for conservation purposes. Thank you, Linda.
And I'm always struck when we have these, look at these maps and have these conversations and we have our own life experience, how much there is of land in the city that I don't think anybody's paying any attention to. It's
Yeah.
just laying there, fallow, ivy growing all over the trees, junk, whatever has happened there. I bet a city employee hadn't walked down from Tucker, from Monterey and Tucker down to the water in, years. I did. It took 20 minutes to pick your way through this neglected,
I know you're talking.
and it's just like, what is this with this land? Shouldn't somebody be caring for it a little bit?
Well, so I think this is a first step. Let's look at what's on our list and what makes sense. And then the next step, Trudy, is maybe are there places like you're talking about that maybe we should be paying attention to that we haven't been?
Maybe some little field trip with some the relevant city people of places we've sort of seen and say, well,
what are you doing?
What do you think? What do you what do you think about your role is with this land? Or what is this? What is this? I mean, this is such precious land in the city of Annapolis to have this much sort of neglected, fallow land that
I think that's a really important, suggestion, Trudy. And, you can see it a bit in getting there and sort of weighing in like on the Greenway mapping tool.
Yeah.
And getting out and pointing out properties. There's also like, I know different places will do like a vacant parcel analysis or like, let's do a layer that shows all of the city-owned property and the different uses. And then a lot will come up, maybe it's just forest or it's overgrown. It's not really dedicated to any particular use, but it might have some good habitat value if, future management actions could take place. So I think you're really building to something.
I'm playing Ashley tonight since we haven't had any cat appearances yet.
That's true. Yeah, Jackie usually has a couple too. Maybe just one. Well, I think that's good. So you guys like that? This is sort of step one. Let's look at what we have on the list. Step two, then let's build out from there. What else is out there we're not paying attention to that needs a little bit of love? This is exciting. I love this.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So so the next step with this. So we did that exercise. We found some discrepancies between the maps that we normally look at and the actual plats. And I guess the question I want to bring to you all is, what are our next steps here? When we were out on that site visit, I sort of asked the folks, do we feel comfortable as individual board members each taking 2 or 3 of these easements on the list and kind of going through this exercise? Look at the plat, look at the easement deed language or the deed language, and look at the old map that we've been using with the satellite imagery and ask these sort of main questions. 1, what is this exactly? Is it a landscape area? Is it an actual easement? Is it something else? Should we continue to monitor it? 2, do the maps and plats line up? Are we actually monitoring the right things here? And then 3, are there questions you have that kind of come up when you're looking at the deed terms? Like what in the devil does this mean in the deed? Does this really cover something? Does it not? But yeah, just kind of getting our ducks in a row. So I guess I'll ask that question. Do you guys feel like you want to try to do that? Each of us take a few of these and, take a crack at it, make some recommendations back to the board, what you think about it.
Yeah, Joanna, I think that's a great idea. And, as we discussed out in the field, we split it up. Just doing a quick inventory, I see 30.
Are you on the website?
Yeah, there's 30 easements.
There's a lot on that list.
We've done 2.
Is there a point there, Jack? I'm just kidding. I know.
The point is that we've got 28 between the 6 of us or however many are going to participate in this inspection.
And I know, she's not here, but I know in going out to monitor Kingsport with Karen during the winter, and I was talking about some of these other ones that are nearby. She's like, oh, those are just like strips of landscape. So, she also probably could take a first glance at this and say, this is, just okay, these few are just really, this is what they are, you know, to cut it down for.
Yeah, she's definitely got a lot of the sort of history of those kinds of things. But I definitely don't have. Yeah, and like, you know, as you guys are alluding to, so there's like, what'd you say, Jack, 30 or something, 28 or 30 on that list? But to my recollection, and folks jump in here if I'm wrong, but we really only monitored like 11 to 13, 14 of those traditionally each year, maybe 15. Some of those got added when we had an intern that worked with the city. I'm not sure how they did this, but they looked through some kind of records to identify other properties that had easements they thought we should be paying attention to. And things got added to the list. And yeah, so it's sort of just like, you know, you're alluding to, we've sort of had this ongoing cycle of like, oh, occasionally things get added and we look at it. Sometimes we don't, but yeah, I feel like let's get this sucker nailed down and figure out, you know, how we really feel about it. And then I think from there we can really grow this out a bit.
Joanne, I think if you would write down on one sheet of paper those questions you ask, and
yeah,
and the only thing I would add to all that is when all that's true, and yes, I'm looking at the right piece of land, a little more guidance about so what, you know. Karen was very helpful to me because when we started, I sort of thought, you know, it was like my yard and I wanted to tidy it up. And she said, no, we want all this dead. This is all good. And I feel like, you know, some of us, speaking for me, are kind of amateurs on what, I mean, I know what tires laying on our land look like, but you know, there's so much that's just, I don't know what it doesn't, I don't see, there's nothing infringing. I don't see any garbage. I don't see, is that all we're looking for? You know, I mean, if you could articulate a question or two about the nature of what did we see? You know, that.
So that's, yeah, you're talking about when we're doing the monitoring piece of a property.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, so that certainly could go hand in hand with this exercise, right? One could be monitoring the site and doing this at the same time. It would probably be pretty efficient to do that. I'm trying to think if in that checklist, how much we put in there. I think we did put in there things that
I feel like we did, Trudy, because I think you mentioned that. It was a good point.
Yeah,
we did, we'll certainly update it.
I'll look at that, Trudy, and I could send it around and see what you think.
But I think it would be really
enough.
helpful to have a, you know, not huge, but a package that just what you said. Did the documents show what they need to show, and then what did we see? You know, and just.
But it's mainly what you. I mean, on our current easements, it's mainly what you said: tires, trash, and we've also witnessed like big landscape debris dumps kind of thing, or inorganic materials, you know, basically dumping of metal and all of that.
Well, that part even I can recognize.
Yeah. That's
I'll look for that.
basically what it is.
Yeah.
Or someone building a shed
or
a
that.
nearby neighbor building a shed on our easement property.
Yeah, that also tends to, once you know where the boundaries are, that tends to be pretty obvious. But that is part of the tricky bit.
But I'm all for it. I've in the past when we talked about how to do this, I think we spend more time trying to make teams than let's just go and, you know, get some number done and see what we turn up that's a real issue or problem, and then put a team approach together. Because I never could participate in any of them. But I watched all those valiant efforts to put together teams, and in the end, that's not very satisfying work. I just soon go out and do the best I can with what I'm seeing, you know, that, and then if we see something important, then send out our best and brightest, you know, to look at it.
So you all like that approach? Let's, you know, and Jack, you're right, there are quite a few of these on here. So maybe we could, you know, just start small, just take a couple of them and see how that goes.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's 10 easements that are under an acre, and I don't think any of those are on our 2022 sign up sheet for easement monitoring.
I think you're right.
And then, so I actually just put together a quick spreadsheet of all the easements that are on the website, and we can kind of add to this as time goes on, but and I put it on our shared drive as well. But So do we
Perfect.
want to use, Joanna, then are you suggesting that we use this sign up sheet for easement monitoring? That is on our shared drive and get these assigned?
So are you asking if folks should be signing up to do both? So pick one of these to monitor and then also to, or what? I'm sorry, Jack.
Just to get
Hit me
people's
again.
names. So there's not really names for who's going to monitor the different various easements on this sheet that we have. So are you suggesting that that folks get their names on here?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get some done.
Yeah. So that's for the monitoring side. And then you're creating a separate one. Is that what you're saying for the,
Oh, sorry.
oh no.
Do you want to just sign people up? Because I think we had that, Joanna, you had a spreadsheet and no one really went in there and signed their names up.
No. I did. I'm gonna, here we go.
Would
All right.
is it impossible to, oh, look at Joanne, aren't you, Joanne, our leader?
Can do a few things. I'm not great with these things, but I can do a few. See somebody else. Oh, Jack is in here. Yeah, so this is the easement monitoring sheet. So you're right, Jack. Most of these folks did not sign up for. We completed one a couple of weeks ago. Karen and Linda did Kingsport. I've put my name down for a couple of these. I can do a few more, but this is, yeah, probably the top priority is to go ahead and make sure we monitor these same sites. Yes, so I would love for people to put their names by these, or if you want to, we can just do it quickly right now. If you,
Whatever you want, I'm
We
game.
probably should so that it gets done.
okay, does anyone, oh, Jack put his name down. Let's see.
That one's close to my house, so I figured it's pretty convenient.
I'll do Bloomsbury Square, Ryder's Glen, South Cherry Grove. These are some I've done in the past. And
That's such a neat little place.
they're all
Ryder's
close by. They're a little bit of nothing. They're small. Village Green, fine too.
Oh yeah, that's one of those kind of funky ones, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's sort of.
yeah.
Mhm. All right, how many other here? Crap. 2. $18. So if we each take 3 of these, we can also reach out to Karen and see if she could take on a couple. But if everyone can sign up for 2 or 3, we should.
Karen, the hard one. She's the one who knows all this history.
Let's give her a hard one. I think what would be a good hard one?
Kingsport's done. It always seems to.
That's just a big one. Yeah, it just takes time to get around it. And it can be, yeah, has a number of ongoing issues related to it. Let's see, Tom or
Yeah,
Patrick.
I can do number 14 back at Harness Creek. That one.
Oh
I
yeah,
can do without a whole lot of problem.
that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty back there. Okay. Then 4, 5. So we've got 6 of these left. So Linda, would you like to take another one? Or have you already?
Anyone. I don't really have a familiarity with.
Acton Landing. So that's like right downtown. Acton Landing is that park, I think, with the geese or the
That one takes about a minute.
swans. Yeah, something like that.
That's a good one, Linda. Go for that one.
Get that one. So Hawkins Cove, that's one of our bigger ones. And the Silopano one, I think that's the one that's by what's that, the education center? Or,
Yeah, I can take that one too. This is
Okay.
Tom. I think again, I just want to make sure it's, we're talking, right at that juncture. I think probably a little bit of review of exactly where the lines are would obviously make things so much easier.
I think we should sign up Karen for the Spa Cove Hawkins Cove, because I know she's really familiar with Hawkins Cove.
I can take the rest.
All right, look at you guys. Thank you so much. Okay.
Can you send us this?
Yeah.
I'm just terrible at.
That's okay.
Go in and find the stuff.
Yep, no, I can send this to you all. And then I put at the top of this, and I'll put this in the email as well. There's a couple of links. One is to where you can find the maps that have been created for us. And then one of them is a link to the deed terms and the plat.
That's huge. Yeah.
I
that'd be
feel
great.
bad.
Thank you.
I'm
You
only
feel
signing
bad?
up for one, and this actually involves not just monitoring, but looking at evaluating the plats and stuff. So I'm happy to have another one, like Adams Park or something.
It's Adams Park. Okay.
Feel free.
All right. Look at that. That's awesome. Okay, great. Oh, this is awesome. Thank you guys so much. So yes, I will send this out to everybody in an email with the links to it. And so what we're going to be asking folks to do is, one, do the monitoring, and then two, this exercise, and I'll write up those questions that I talked about. Yeah. Does that
We
make
have
sense?
a goal for when you hope we would all get this done?
Well, let's see. Our next meeting is September 8th. Is that too fast? I'm just sort of pulling that out of thin air. I don't feel like wed to that. You guys, you want to shoot for it and see how we do? September 8th?
I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, this is good. All right. So we'll start with these. And then after we take a look at these, I think you're right, Jack. I think there are a number of really tiny ones on that long list.
Yeah,
I
and
haven't
can
looked at it in a while.
I made a folder. It's in the shared drive that we have. I can send the link to everybody.
So that's going to be the list of all of the easements with the
At
acreage.
least all the ones that are on the city's website. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's the most comprehensive thing I'm aware of.
Well done, well done. Progress.
Yeah, this is great progress. Okay, that is good. I have one more thing for you guys, if that's okay. Be fairly quick. It's going to be a request. Sorry. So Hawkins Cove. So, and I don't know, Racine, if you are able to speak to this or not. Jackie had written back and said she could. There was an additional, I don't know if you want to call it an additional visioning session that happened at Hawkins Cove, maybe in March or May, but it was, if you guys recall, so Hawkins Cove, the city wrote a grant to carry out a little visioning exercise and then to do some design work for the things that were envisioned. And there has also been a landscape architect who has come forward, who is, I think, a neighbor or lives nearby and is willing to volunteer his time to help develop at least sort of a concept plan for the whole property. At least that's my understanding of what kind of, for the most part, green improvements would we want to make and where would they be located on the property? And so,
Okay.
go ahead, Racine.
Yeah, you've just said it about as much as I know. Jackie would be a better person to talk to, but yes, there was a grant written. I think the due date was in March or April, probably March. And there is a separate piece of it. The grant application that was written is for the living shoreline and all that accompanies that. But the separate piece is the dredging piece. And I know that someone or they are, or whoever they are, looking for additional funding for the dredging. I think they're looking for like state or federal funds that might be available to help us with the dredging. It's apparently like, you know, it's important to the mayor as his vision of the area, that the area is accessible by boat. There is a sort of redevelopment of the Hackett properties that's going to happen over time. And so we want to make sure that during the conversations about what's going to be happening during that redevelopment, because it's right there, that Hawkins Cove is included in those discussions and is not overlooked, I guess, as they're looking to redevelop the properties over there. That's as much as I know.
So let me check on a couple of things. So you originally had a grant, you have an existing grant award. It's probably coming close to
Yes.
being ended, and that
Yes.
was to do the visioning and a little bit of design.
Well, the grant money that we have, we were given 65,000 by CBT. And then we got an additional 65,000 from a private donor that partnered with CBT. So we've got 130,000 right now, and that's going to go toward design and any construction costs, or permitting that may come up, that we could cover under those funds. We don't know how much it's going to cost to design it. Now, I spoke to Mike Rosberg in DPW. He's the engineer that is the project manager for Hawkins Cove for the city. And they have not sent out the RFP yet. The RFP is being held up because the trust wanted to take a look at the RFP to make sure that whatever they're envisioning and funding is going to happen. So the RFP is on delay right now. But that's as much as I know, is that we've got the 130 for design and permitting. And then we've also asked for I think an additional 500,000. And hopefully that would, as well as the living shoreline, it would help us address the trails that go to Truxton Park. There are some BMPs there that we want to make sure we tie into, and that there's a healthy ecosystem there between the living shoreline and the BMPs that have already been installed. But that's all I know.
Okay. And are you familiar? So the landscape architect that was going to volunteer his time,
Yes.
he was going to help draw out the trails and the BMPs?
I don't know who he's in contact with. My understanding is that he's willing to volunteer his time, and again, I don't know who he's working with, but he's trying to schedule meetings on Saturdays and weekends and things like that, which are outside the working hours of city employees. But also we're held up because we're waiting for the RFP to go out and we're also waiting to hear back on the grant that was written. So we're kind of held up right now.
Gotcha. So I wanted to.
I have a dumb question, if we can.
No, go ahead.
Is any of that money going to terminate? I mean, is there a lifespan as far as when that money goes away?
Usually there are restrictions that come with a grant.
Right.
And Mike Rosberg, the project manager, is also working with the trust. And I would guess that there is a date that we need to have, information into them. But if necessary, the trust has been very flexible and has given us extensions before. So, and right now it's being held up because of the trust. So, if we need an extension, we more than likely will be able to get an extension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I wanted
to use one of your great lines earlier in the meeting. Is there a question here?
I'm coming. It's coming. So my question to you all. So I kind of wanted to throw out what's happening with Hawkins Cove, because it relates to this board's interest in putting an easement on the property. If you guys recall, a while back, we had several conversations with the Maryland Environmental Trust to see if they would be open to and interested in holding an easement on this property, Hawkins Cove, and they are interested. We had a couple of conversations. We had a couple of sort of legalese, kind of not holdups, but things to look into, which I think have since been looked into. And then we were also waiting to get those funds to be able to do a boundary survey, which we now have in the critical area in lieu of pot of money. Then we became aware of this sort of visioning process for Hawkins Cove and these ideas to make some enhancements to it. And sort of, generally you don't want to put an easement down until you know exactly what you want to be on that property for the long haul. So we thought, okay, let's hold this up for a little bit while we see what happens with this process. So it sounds like we're at a pretty good point, I'm going to say, to restart those easement conversations. And my question to you all is, I have been sort of helping to, keep up communications with MET, and there's a wonderful woman there, Ann Carlson, who checks in with me every other month to see if anything's happening. But I am definitely getting backed up personally, work-wise. So I wanted to see if one of you would like to volunteer to sort of help restart this conversation about an MET easement on the Hawkins Cove property, and really start to dig in there and figure out what the next steps would be. Where we left off was we wanted to bring together, so Jackie, MET, board members, and sorry about that. And
Don't bark.
my mind was going too. And also Rec and Parks Department, to kind of have this conversation all together about the easement and think through next steps. Linda, I feel like you're formulating a question over there. Yeah.
So, is there a concept plan yet for what, like, based on community input and priorities of the city, their goals for the site? Is there a concept plan that one could basically have it? Because I think that's where MET would go, is
Yep.
as soon as you have an idea of what you want to do on the property.
It sounds like it's close. I don't know the answer to that. So I've asked for that in the past.
I mean, we have a very, very generalized concept plan, which was what we used for outreach before we got any feedback from any kind of a design organization. And so right now we don't have, like, it's so simple. I don't know that it can really even be thought of as like a real concept plan.
Yeah, so it's probably like a list of desired.
Exactly.
uses.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess it depends on what those improvements are. And, if they're green BMPs, if they're trails that don't have pavement, I imagine, moving forward, the conversation would probably be okay at this point. But if there are things that MET might really want to get nailed down, that obviously would need to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to, if you think the time is right and you want someone to re-engage MET and then figure out how to get the right parties to sit down and kick off the easement discussion, I'm happy to take the lead on that, Joanna.
That would be great. Yeah.
One other question is coming to mind that, which is, that I think this is for Racine. Do you all have a sense of, like, the concept or the desired list of improvements to the property? I mean, there's going to be the, living shoreline, or the dredging, or the this or the that kind
Right.
of the
Yeah.
type of
Well,
stuff that likely would, be implemented with different sets of funding sources. But where my mind goes is the city thinking already about where the funding would come from to make more of the community desired recreational
the outreach that we did was, in an effort to get feedback from the community that is directly next to Hawkins Cove, but it was also open to the entire rest of the city, of course, but we definitely looked for some feedback from residents that are nearby. And we do have a list of sort of talking points or a list of ideas of what people said they wanted to see there. And we have to recognize that, of course, we're not going to be able to put everything that everyone asked for, and that there would be some priority over some things, for example, security, and I guess lighting would be an issue, as well as accessibility for disabled or senior citizens or anything like. So those are two items that were brought up that I think will probably be high on our list of something to include as part of the design. And we want to keep as many of those options in the design as we can, so that we are addressing what the residents want to see there.
Good. Okay. And there's a good grant coming out shortly, and it's a program that's going to have a significant federal investment ramp up. And it's through the National Park Service, and it's for local governments to apply. And that might be a great one for you all to look at. I can email you and Jackie.
Yeah, if you send some information, that'll be great.
Yeah.
That'll be great. I really would appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for offering to sort of take point on this, Linda. I appreciate it. And I can send you sort of the history that I have. And I want to see if anybody else wants to work on that with Linda, if this is something that interests you in particular.
I don't know exactly what I could do to help, Linda, but I would like to volunteer myself. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Okay. Because it does sound like there'll be a couple of parts. There's definitely the, easement itself and getting conversations going there, but also it sounds like sort of figuring out what are those lists of interests for that property? Which ones are on the top of the list for the city? What do we know right now is being planned for the site, and where's that going?
I'll get you, Linda, when you send me the information about the grant, I'll respond with the list of what people wanted to see there.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you guys so much. So I'll send Linda, Jack, and I'll send everybody if you're interested too, just sort of the history of where the conversations have been about the Hawkins Cove potential easement and steps we've gone through thus far, and certainly contact information to Ann Carlson at MET and others that have been involved. And that's all I have for you. I would say at our next meeting in September, hoping we can have more of a conversation about sort of that Greenway map, the city's ideas, how they'd like us to be involved in developing a plan based on that map. I have two thoughts there. I wanted to bring in Eric Lashinsky and he is he the head of the planning department now? The planning?
I have to tell you, apparently Eric Borchers left.
Yes, I did see that.
Between Sally leaving and the new director and Eric Borchers leaving, Eric Lashinsky may be running things. I don't know, but he's very busy.
Yes,
he's out of the office this week on vacation.
Yes, yeah, and he had emailed me before he went on vacation, Racine. I remember seeing that too, and. Yes, I think you're right. Chief of Comprehensive Planning. Anyway, I was going to see if he could come in and sort of tell us where this is fitting in with the comprehensive plan update right now. And then have Rob Savage sort of come in and talk to us about here's what the city council's environmental matters committee is thinking they'd like to see happen with the Greenway map and turn it into a plan. And then we can have a discussion. What do we want to do with this thing? And where we want to go from with this product that's been created so far. So that was one of the things on my list. And then of course, following up on the pieces we've started today. Any questions or thoughts of things we want to jump into at our next meeting?
Let's wrap up the procedures promptly. And
yes, nail that thing down.
Enough time perfecting it. It's a great step forward. Just to clarify. Yes.
Joanna, the only thing I would add is updating these maps. I don't know if anybody had a chance to see the kind of mock-up that I did for the Brewer Ave easement, but knowing that some of the maps that we have of the easements are not accurate, and how we go about updating those, I think might be a good idea to talk about.
It's a great idea. I'm sorry we didn't get to it today, because I really appreciate what you did, and it was great. I think what you started with there. So yes, let's get that on the agenda for next time too.
I would like to tack on to each of those city officials you described who are coming to talk to us, their perception of this sort of business of this fallow city land, I mean, maybe that's not, I mean, we take off the descriptive word, but that it's a seemingly unowned, unclaimed, unnurtured city land. What do they think about it? What is that in their heads? As they're working on each of those planning steps, what are they thinking about them? I mean, are they even included in city maps? I don't know,
I think that's a great question. What are you guys thinking about when it comes to the undeveloped, fallow, city-owned properties that are
whatever
out
the
there?
nice words are.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
are
I mean,
you
they're-
incorporating
they're-
that into planning and
Get their views while they're in, telling us about all the official planning things. What about the stuff that hasn't crept into any plans yet?
little pieces. Yeah,
All right.
that's a good question. Let's get that one down. All right. Anything else from you all here? Looking good. Before we close, I just want to say thank you so much. I feel like this was a really good interactive meeting, and you guys, thank you so much for volunteering for all these things that you're doing. It's just so nice to have a full board and be really up and running. So just wanted to share my appreciation with all of you guys.
Do you see us as continuing as Zoom meetings, or are you?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. How do you guys feel about that? I don't think we can do hybrid. I think that's the trick is, well, the city can't provide a hybrid option. So if we go in person, we all have to go in person.
Yeah, I don't know where you would meet normally prior to the garage going down, but the garage is no more. If that makes a difference in your decision making.
The garage is no more. We used to meet at Pitt Moyer. That's where we were meeting. Yeah, at the recreation center. Although I think once we did meet at one of the city buildings there, but you're right, the parking may be an issue.
Well, generally, I don't like Zoom, but I do find the hour we meet, and the way Zoom does seem to work pretty well with at least my pace of how, I think I'd rather be at home doing this from 5 to 7 than out of the, out at Pitt Moyer. But I'm happy either way. Generally, I like to see people in real people, but.
Yeah, anybody else have any thoughts there?
I think this works quite well. Seems like it's convenient for everybody. But I do agree with Trudy. It's nice seeing people in real life.
Once in a while, maybe we could have at least an
Can we do
in-person,
that?
so we get to see. I mean, Tom, I haven't seen his face for years.
I know. And I finally figured out how to use this thing too. So
It's working great.
what's that
And
voice
now
again?
COVID's over, so we don't need
Yeah, right. That's right. Oh gosh. Oh shoot. Well, it sounds like so far Zoom is working, but maybe let's do in person twice a year or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that the feeling I'm getting? Okay. All right. Well, maybe this next one, do you want to do this next one as a Zoom?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So September 8th, we'll keep doing the Zoom, and maybe then we can see if there's a time we want to try to do it in person. I'm sorry. My dog is reminding me it's her dinner time.
Obviously, it's time to close then. I think that's a motion to adjourn.
Yes. All right, Tom. And then can I have a second?
You woke my dog up too. She's been pacing around with that whistle.
Sounds like a second there.
Should have done that.
Yeah, my dog's
animals
staring
have
at me
decided.
too.
I know. Well, they run the house. All right. So first from Tom, second from Trudy. If that's good for you, Trudy.
Yeah.
Second. All right. All in favor, say aye. Or raise your hand. Aye. Awesome. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and I'll be
Aye
in
and
touch by
aye.
email.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Joanna. Thanks, Racine. Thank you, everybody.
Good seeing
Yes,
everybody.
Bye-bye.